$32 million. That is what it cost Nassau County to build a sports arena on a former Air Force base in Uniondale, Long Island in 1972. They needed a team to fill it. The NHL gave them an expansion franchise almost by accident to stop a rival league from moving in first. 8 years later, that accidental franchise won 4 consecutive Stanley Cup championships, the greatest dynasty in the history of Long Island sports, and turned a county-owned arena in the suburbs into one of the most feared buildings in professional hockey. Then the team left. Then they came back. Then they left again. And when they finally moved into their new arena at Belmont Park in 2021, they left 4 Stanley Cup banners hanging inside a building that now hosts lacrosse games, boat shows, and the occasional concert. This is not just a story about an arena. It is a story about a franchise that was born by accident, built a dynasty nobody remembers, and spent 30 years trying to find a home that felt like what they had already left. Nassau County did not build this arena for a hockey team. In fact, when local politicians broke ground on 63 acres of Mitchell Field, a decommissioned Army and Air Force base in the suburban heart of Uniondale, they had no anchor tenant at all. This was an act of pure civic ambition, a $32 million bet that if you built a modern arena in the suburbs, the major leagues would eventually come. When the doors opened on February 11, 1972, the 15,000-seat concrete bowl was a stadium in search of an identity. It was designed with clear sight lines for basketball and hockey, yet no major league franchise had agreed to call it home. Instead, the very first crowd gathered to watch the American Basketball Association's New York Nets host the Pittsburgh Condors. It was a spectacular civic monument, but it was also empty of the spirit that would later define it. Nassau County had built a cathedral on a flat, windswept airfield. Now, they desperately needed a congregation. The newly formed World Hockey Association believed they had found their anchor tenant in the New York Raiders, but Nassau County officials refused to lease their shiny new arena to what they considered a minor league operation. To block the upstart league, County Executive Ralph Caso hired William Shea, the influential lawyer who had previously brought the Mets to New York. Shea used his relationships with NHL President Clarence Campbell and Rangers President William Jennings to lobby for an expansion team. The NHL agreed, awarding Long Island a franchise for the 1972 to 1973 season, solely to keep the rival league out of Nassau. But the New York Islanders arrived far faster than the organization could prepare. On October 7, 1972, 12,000 fans watched the Islanders lose their inaugural game 3-2 against the Atlanta Flames. The makeshift roster struggled through one of the worst expansion seasons in professional sports history, finishing with just 12 wins. The county had its tenant, but on the ice, they were barely surviving. Within 8 years, general manager Bill Torrey and head coach Al Arbor assembled a homegrown roster that transformed the struggling expansion franchise into an elite hockey powerhouse. At its center stood Dennis Potvin, whose 3 James Norris Memorial trophies in 1976, 1978, and 1979 established him as the league's premier two-way defenseman. Alongside him, center Brian Trottier captured both the Art Ross and the Hart Memorial Trophy in 1979, proving the team possessed top-end star power. Mike Bossy provided the signature scoring feat of the era, matching a legendary NHL milestone by scoring 50 goals in 50 games during the 1980 to 1981 season. This powerhouse was completed by the physical presence of Clark Gillies, the clutch scoring of Bob Nystrom and John Tonelli, and the fierce, combative goaltending of Billy Smith. Together, they forged an identity of relentless blue-collar dominance that resonated directly with the suburban working-class fans packing the arena. 7 members of this legendary group eventually earned induction into the Hockey Hall of Fame, cementing a legacy that transformed Nassau Coliseum into a shrine of hockey history. The era of dominance began on May 24, 1980, when Bob Nystrom's overtime goal against the Philadelphia Flyers clinched the franchise's first Stanley Cup. Over the next 3 years, Nassau Coliseum transformed from a suburban arena into an impenetrable fortress. The Islanders captured 4 consecutive championships, defeating the Minnesota North Stars in 1981, sweeping the Vancouver Canucks in 1982, and completing their run in 1983 by sweeping Wayne Gretzky's high-flying Edmonton Oilers. Only the Montreal Canadiens have matched this modern-era feat of 4 straight titles. The statistical backbone of this dynasty was a record 19 consecutive playoff series wins, a mark that remains untouched in NHL history. On home ice, the Islanders went 11-1 in Stanley Cup Finals games during this golden run. Visiting teams dreaded the trip to Uniondale. The Coliseum earned a national reputation as one of the most hostile, deafening, and claustrophobic environments in professional sports. The low ceiling trapped a wall of sound, and the physical intimacy of the bowl turned the building into a psychological weapon. Nassau Coliseum had become inseparable from winning at the highest level. The loss to the Edmonton Oilers in 1984, followed by the first missed Stanley Cup final the next year, ended the uninterrupted championship run. This defeat did more than end a historic streak. It exposed the first crack in the foundation of the dynasty. Within a few short years, the legendary core began to disintegrate. Mike Bossy, battling a chronic back injury, played his final NHL game in 1987 at just 30 years old, forcing one of hockey's greatest natural goal scorers into early retirement. Only 1 year later, in 1988, Dennis Potvin hung up his skates, removing the physical and emotional anchor of the Islanders' blue line. By 1990, Brian Trottier departed Long Island, eventually winning 2 more championships with the Pittsburgh Penguins. The departures of these franchise cornerstones left a massive vacuum inside the Uniondale arena. The championship banners still hung from the low ceiling, but the ice below them now belonged to a franchise entering a far more fragile era. Long before the concrete of the Coliseum itself began to fail, the emotional heart of the team had already moved on. By the early 1990s, the concrete structure on Mitchell Field was visibly showing its age, while newer arenas across North America began generating massive revenue through luxury suites and premium seating. The Coliseum had none. This lack of premium inventory left the franchise without the essential revenue streams needed to compete in a modern NHL. Inside the building, the concourses were cramped. Concessions had aged out of step with modern expectations, and the crumbling infrastructure became increasingly difficult to ignore. The arena's isolated suburban location presented its own logistical hurdles. Without a direct mass transit link, virtually every fan had to drive, packing the local parkways and choking the surrounding streets with traffic. Compounding these physical issues was the arena's ownership structure. Because Nassau County owned the building, maintenance and upgrades were tied to local government budgets and political battles rather than direct private investment. Over the next 2 decades, a succession of team owners, county executives, and developers proposed various redevelopment plans. Yet each effort stalled in a cycle of political gridlock and unfulfilled promises, leaving the home of hockey's last great dynasty frozen in a bygone era. Charles Wang believed he had the solution. In 2004, the Islanders' owner unveiled the Lighthouse project, a massive $3.75 billion master plan to transform the 63 acres of Mitchell Field. This ambitious vision featured a towering 60-story signature lighthouse, a state-of-the-art arena, 5-star hotels, housing, and retail. In 2006, the Nassau County Legislature approved the broad concept by a decisive 16-2 vote. But local bureaucratic hurdles and strict zoning demands from the town of Hempstead dragged the project into a political swamp. As years slipped away, the soaring multi-billion-dollar vision was systematically sheared down. What remained was a stripped-back, $400 million taxpayer-funded bond issue, $350 million for a renovated arena, and $50 million for a minor league ballpark. On August 1, 2011, Nassau County residents went to the polls. When the ballots were counted, 57% of voters rejected the bond, with 43% in favor. The public had been handed a direct choice to save the arena, and they chose to walk away, wary of tax increases in an already expensive suburban county. A heartbroken, Charles Wang saw the vote as the end of the road in Uniondale. Within months, negotiations opened with the newly constructed Barclays Center in Brooklyn. The path out of Nassau County was now set. The Islanders' first season in Brooklyn began in September 2015, immediately exposing a fundamental truth. Barclays Center was never built for hockey. Because the arena was designed primarily for basketball, squeezing an NHL regulation ice rink inside required severe compromises. The most glaring mismatch hung directly overhead. Instead of centering over the red line, the massive scoreboard sat off-center, hovering over the left blue line. In the stands, the sightlines were disastrous. Roughly 400 seats behind the goals had completely obstructed views, where heavy concrete overhangs cut off any view of the ice. In some upper deck sections, fans literally could not see the net directly below them, while safety netting draped awkwardly across the boards to protect spectators from flying pucks. For the players, team staff, and the fiercely loyal suburban fan base, the move created a punishing logistical strain. Traveling from traditional Long Island neighborhoods to Atlantic Avenue meant fighting exhausting highway traffic or enduring complex, multi-transfer train rides on the Long Island Railroad. By moving west, the franchise traded their suburban sanctuary for a building that was fundamentally the wrong shape. For thousands of Long Island fans, the trip to Brooklyn was a border they simply refused to cross. The geographic and cultural detachment was immediate and measurable. During the final full season at Nassau Coliseum, the Islanders averaged 15,334 fans per game. At Barclays Center, that number plummeted to 12,773. In a league experiencing steady growth, only the Carolina Hurricanes drew smaller crowds. The drop in attendance represented a severe business failure. The entire partnership had been anchored by a 25-year lease signed in 2014, meant to secure the franchise's long-term future. Yet the reality on the ground was so fractured that by 2017, both the Islanders and Barclays Center management were already looking for an escape. Both sides began applying intense pressure to trigger the agreement's opt-out clauses, desperate to dissolve a partnership that was failing both on the ledger and in the stands. On April 5, 2017, Billy Joel took the stage to reopen the Nassau Coliseum after a $180 million renovation. The extensive update modernized the interior concourses and wrapped the original concrete shell in a new beach-inspired aluminum facade, though it also reduced overall seating capacity. It was a celebrated revival, but it was never meant to be a permanent solution. In 2018, New York State approved the development proposal for a new arena at Belmont Park, sealing the franchise's long-term future elsewhere. Even so, the old barn had one final poetic chapter left to write. While the new facility was under construction, the Islanders returned full-time to Nassau for the 2020 to 2021 season, giving their passionate fan base one last ride in Uniondale. At the groundbreaking, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman credited the political force that cleared the path, stating, "We would not be here today without the energy and commitment of Governor Cuomo." On June 23, 2021, the old barn found its voice one last time. Down 3-2 against the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Stanley Cup semifinals, the Islanders pushed Game 6 into overtime. Just over a minute into the extra period, Anthony Beauvillier intercepted a clearing attempt and scored, triggering a chaotic beer-soaked celebration that sent thousands of plastic cups raining onto the ice. It was the loudest the Coliseum had been in decades, a raw, deafening release of suburban pride that shook the concrete foundations. The victory forced a decisive Game 7, but the championship chase ended 2 nights later with a quiet 1-0 defeat in Tampa. Because of that loss, Beauvillier's overtime winner became the final goal, and Game 6 the final game the franchise would ever play in the building. The team moved to their new arena at Belmont Park that fall, leaving behind a fading suburban landmark that, for one fleeting summer night, still sounded exactly like home. On November 20, 2021, the New York Islanders played their first game at UBS Arena, a state-of-the-art facility built at Belmont Park. The opening ended a 49-year journey that began on the flat concrete of Mitchell Field in 1972. While the franchise moved west to Elmont, the old barn in Uniondale remained standing, its civic purpose permanently scaled back. By the 2024 to 2025 season, the Coliseum had settled into a quieter existence. It now hosts the NBA G League's Long Island Nets, the New York Riptide of the National Lacrosse League, and a revolving schedule of trade expos, boat shows, and occasional boxing matches. Yet, if you look up, the physical evidence of what once was remains untouched. The championship banners from 1980, 1981, 1982, and 1983 still hang in the rafters. The building that housed hockey's last great dynasty serves a much smaller role today, but its history remains preserved in the quiet air. Today, a modern arena shines at Belmont Park, yet the franchise's soul remains anchored to the concrete shell in Uniondale. The Coliseum proved that identity cannot be bought with luxury suites. It is forged through decades of shared, deafening passion. As the old barn quietens, we're left with a sobering truth. You can easily build a newer house, but you can never manufacture a home. Share your memories below.